Hi, Mincer here. Welcome to the first video of the stun guide. So why stun? It's almost in all circumstances better to kill outright. But what if you cannot do that for whatever reason? With stun you can safely complete content you would otherwise be unable to clear. I'll give you an example. An extra projectile boss who would be absolutely lethal and would wreck you could be turned into a trivial fight with a stun-locked boss. Otherwise, you would have to skip this encounter and miss out on loot. Another thing to mention is the role you play. You could function as crowd control in your party, and the only complaints I've had so far was about tormented spirits not being able to move and infect other monsters. This guide is made in a YouTube playlist. The first episode explains the basic game mechanics, like stun chance, duration, reduced enemy stun threshold, and how much of that you would be needing. The guide also features stun gear. The rest of the playlist consists out of boss kills. I highlight the links in the videos. This is the sentence given for stun by the wiki page, and I'm going to dissect this sentence for you. Whenever a player or monster takes damage, there is a chance they will be stunned. A stun interrupts whatever the creature was doing while a brief animation is played. That animation is cause for build titles like Slam Jam. The animation is repetitive, like a GIF, whenever a target is locked into consecutive stuns. Hence the wording Slam Jam for ground slam and jam for the rockstar headbanging. Another note about an animation is the cartoonish style Tom and Jerry circles. They won't show if your graphic settings are too low. The default length of stun is 350 milliseconds. Note it's single hit, so does not need to be a crit. And it's compared to the target's maximum life. So what if I party up? Will a monster have multiple times more life and thus won't be stunned? The answer is, for stun calculations, the single player life of monsters is used, even in parties. So henceforth we'll not use the wording for formulas, we only talk about defender effective max life or DEM life. The default length, so that means stun duration is not influenced by the amount of damage you deal, unlike other status ailments like shock and freeze, so a small hit stuns for just as long as a big hit. Percentage chance to stun is calculated by a formula. Your damage dealt divided by DEM life times 200. Given is, you need to have a minimum of 20% chance to stun, otherwise the chance will not be rolled and will be ignored. For the formula we can calculate the damage needed for a 100% chance to stun as well. That's 50% of a monster's life. In case of the picture, how much would that be for a file boss? The answer is a truckload. And if you can do 50% damage in a single hit of a file boss, you won't be needing stun. You will just killing him in 2 shots. To be able to stun with lower damage, there's a thing called stun threshold. It reduces the value of DEM life. Example: if your attack has 50% reduced enemy stun threshold, then the DEM life would be 50% smaller for the stun chance calculation. Now there's an extra rule. For percentages above 75% you get diminished returns. This was implemented because it was too easy to reach 100% threshold and then you could get a 100% chance to stun by doing just 1 damage to a boss. So that was nerfed. The threshold above 75% is calculated with a formula. This table shows the stun chance of a whole range of different stun thresholds. Note the difference between the threshold you read from your skill tooltip in game and the actual threshold that the game uses for calculations, the effective stun threshold. The thresholds are the same up to 75%. After that you get an effective threshold that's lower than the tooltip. So if you have a tooltip of 100% in game, your effective threshold is only 87.5%. So if we use this percentage threshold from the earlier example, like the Vaal boss, the 50% life of the Vaal boss is reduced by a lot. Only 6% and a quarter is needed to get 100% stun chance. Monsters can also avoid or be completely immune to stun. Examples are Unwavering map or monster mods, and there's the map mod that gives chance to avoid status ailments, but that only works for elemental status ailments and not for stun. Bosses can be completely immune, like Atzeri, and for players there is the passive keystone called Unwavering Stance. If a monster has energy shield and he's not out of energy shield, then he has a 50% chance to avoid the stun. Onto the factors that can modify the stun duration. Sources from the player that can have the mod are percentage increased stun duration. Sources from the monster can be stun recovery, which can be lowered by Warlord's Mark, and I got a suspicion there are hidden factors that can increase it, like the speed shrine. These are further influenced by buff duration that can be increased with the cursed temporal chains, and action speed that can be lowered with the status ailment chill. So, a frequently asked question I get is, how much reduced enemy stun threshold do I actually need to lock down bosses? Now here's the big puzzle. Let's take a look again at the chance to stun formula. It's influenced by your damage dealt in a single hit and your effective enemy stun threshold. Since you will always be limited in sources for either damage or stun thresholds, it's rather a big puzzle. Example, you change your gear and you do 10% less damage to gain 10% tooltip stun threshold. The damage you now need to get a 100% chance to stun might be harder to reach than before the change. It's a precarious balance. Investing in reduced stun threshold comes at the cost of your damage. Think about gear, gem links, passive skill tree choices. But on the bright side, you do not need a 100% chance to stun. Think about it this way. What if you can hit the boss 5 times before he wakes up from a stun? So you get 5 shots and rolling that percentage chance to stun. In that case, 90% chance to stun would probably be enough. And what if you can hit the boss 3 times before he finishes his next action? In other words, you got 3 more times to interrupt the boss. In that scenario, 75% chance to stun might be more than enough with 8 rolls to lock him down. And besides all that, Warlord's Mark could add the last percentages of chance to stun you need. On to the next question. How much increased stun duration do I actually need? Now this is of course interlocked with factors I mentioned earlier. You need to stun before the target makes his next action. The default length of stun is 350 milliseconds. That's really short. Multiply by 100 plus tooltip duration divided by 100, and then you still ain't got much. You get a decent amount when you factor in temporal chains, Warlord's Mark, and the elemental status ailment chill. Do note, bosses take reduced effect from curses. Now compare that modifier duration to your attack speed. Right, back to the question, how much do I need? Well, you have to find out for yourself. It's depending on so many factors, besides your character, also on monster dam life, so the monster level, and curse effectiveness. My personal thumb rule is get 75% plus tooltip reduced enemy stun threshold and 150% plus increased stun duration. This will surely lock down any white magic rare or rogue exile you encounter, and from here on you have to work it out for yourself. Try trial and error for fine-tuning. Next up, sources for stun mods. The passive tree. To start off, there's the global stun wheel. It gives a lot of stun. A total of 15% reduced stun threshold and 100% increased duration. Note these are global, so can be used with any weapon, attack or spell. And then there's the classic mace wheel for a total of 80% reduced stun threshold and 40% increased duration. It's really nice, but it's limited to maces. Other skill nodes are Executioner and Martial Experience for 200 melee weapons, and there's Heavy Draw for bows. Next up, skill gems. A favorite skill for boss killing is Heavy Strike. It grants 25% reduced stun threshold, and quality gives duration. A possible drawback is the knockback. If you push the boss out of reach, you're unable to hit him again quickly, and thus lose the lockdown. The gem is limited to a select amount of weapons. It's also limited to one enemy, so you cannot lock down twin bosses in a map, or control the ads that might spawn inside the boss room. Ground Slime is the classic stun skill. Like Heavy Strike, it grants 25% reduced enemy stun threshold. Quality increases the duration. Limited to a select group of weapons, staves and maces only. The AoE is nice. You could lock down multi-monsters, although you do have to be careful with aiming the wave. Monsters might escape your onslaught. Next is Foul Ground Slam. It stuns always 100%, no matter what threshold you have. And that's really nice. It also knockbacks enemies, and that might be a problem like Heavy Strike, but the AoE is so big, 360 degrees, and hits everything. The problem for its use, what is limiting, is its available charges. It can only hold 4. So this severely limits your ability to lock down bosses, because you might run out of charges before they are defeated. Next up, there is the support gem Stun. It gives a massive amount of modifiers, and is global, so can be used with any weapon or spell. It does remove a potential damage gem from your setup, but might be well worth it when you're attempting to stun big game. Endurance charge on melee stun gives both reduced stun threshold as duration, like the stun gem, but is limited to melee support, and the modifiers are significantly lower than the stun gem, so probably not worth replacing a damage gem in your gem setup. Now here's my favorite, Ice Crash. It does not have the 25% reduced stun threshold like Heavy Strike or Ground Slam, but it does have the AoE like Foul Ground Slam. It hits everything. And it doesn't have charges like Foul Ground Slam. You can spam it, as long as you have the mana for it, of course. It converts so much physical damage into cold that it can reliably chill big targets, and that of course helps out on the stun duration. You could also use Arctic Armor in combination with Heavy Strike or Ground Slam or Ice Crash, but the problem is it's rather small, so melee targets might not always stand on top of the ground effect. The chill duration can be increased with Hypothermia, and that's a rare bonus, because you cannot find increased chill duration anywhere on the lower side of the skill tree. Next up, sources gear-wise. Maces can have the most mods, both implicit as it can have the suffix mods, increased duration and reduced stun threshold. Many weapons can be crafted with the vegan mod, reduced stun threshold with this weapon. It's a bit lower than the max suffix roll. However, it's not global. You have to use that weapon to make use of the vegan mod. The stun belt gives the most stun duration compared to other belts at the cost of damage or life. But whatever belt you use, it takes 2 suffixes, So 2 potential resist mods you need to compensate for on other pieces of gear. Unique sources can be face breakers gloves. Even though you're swinging a mace, the 10% might still be worth it compared to gloves with attack speed, damage and life. The extra gore is very cool, and note the reduced stun threshold is global, so can be used for spells as well. The new warband boots have some reduced enemy stun thresholds, and it's a nice addition to the selection already there. It might be the last bit of extra bang you need to lock down a boss. There's also more items that can have stun threshold, like a quiver, but as always, keep the balance in the back of your mind when making choices. Is a particular choice nerfing you harder damage-wise than you're gaining with the stun modifier? That's the question. Well, it's rather a lengthy video, but I hope it's going to be of tremendous help to you. Have fun watching more videos with the boss demos, and see ya, and thanks for watching.